Get her away from the donor entrance. Now.
Ma'am, she only asked for coffee.
And I said no. Our donors are arriving. I will not have this entrance turned into a shelter.
Camille, don't do this.
Then choose, Daniel. Protect this event or undermine me in front of the board again.
I'm asking you to show some decency.
Decency is not letting one person ruin a night meant to help hundreds. I can leave. No, you can be removed. Where did she get that? Some doors remember who opened them. 10 days, Daniel. The board votes in 10 days. Don't make me question whose side you're on.
Let her go.
The old woman disappeared into the rain, and I could not stop staring at that key. 11 minutes later, my wife was laughing in the lobby with a state senator. That is not an exaggeration. I looked at the clock above the concierge desk because I wanted a number to hold on to, something solid, and 11 minutes was what it took for Camille to go from signing a trespass notice against a woman in the rain to standing under the chandeliers in her pastel pink dress, her black hair pinned up in that neat bun she has worn since the day I met her, welcoming 300 donors to the Mercer Harbor Foundation Gala. She was good. I have to say that, because if you think she was a screaming villain, you will not understand a single thing that happened afterward. She stood at the microphone with her hands relaxed and said the word dignity like it belonged to her. Every one of us, she said, has stood on the wrong side of a door at some point in our lives. Tonight is about second chances. Tonight is about opening doors. The room applauded. I clapped too because my hands did it without asking me. And the whole time I was thinking about a paper cup and a hood full of rain. I went looking for the supervisor who had spoken up for the old woman. His name was Ray Colby, 22 years with us, a man who called every guest by their last name. He was not at his post. A younger officer told me Ray had been pulled from event duty for the rest of the night, effective immediately at the Foundation's request. That was when Lena Ortiz found me. Lena has worked guest services at the flagship hotel since before I had a real title. She waited until the hallway by the kitchen was empty, and she did not waste words. "Mr. Mercer," she said. That was not the first time. "What do you mean?" "Since the spring, we were told not to give food, coffee, or seating to anyone who walks in without a Foundation appointment. If they don't have a scheduled slot, we call security. It came down through the Foundation office." I felt something cold move through my chest. "Lena, why didn't anybody tell me?" She looked at me the way you look at a man who has just asked a question with an answer he is not going to like. "We did." I stood there in my navy blazer with a glass of sparkling water in my hand and understood that every complaint any employee had raised for 6 months had traveled up through the Foundation office, and the Foundation office is Camille, and none of it had ever reached my desk. One ugly moment I could survive. A policy is a different animal. I tried to fix the small thing first because the small thing was in front of me. I called Human Resources that night and asked them to reinstate Ray Colby to his post. The director was polite and careful and told me she was not able to do that. Event staffing during a Foundation function fell under the operating authority I had delegated to the executive director the previous year. My own signature was in the way. I want to be honest with you about what that felt like, because it is the center of everything that came after. It did not feel like betrayal. It felt like walking into a room in my own house and finding the door locked from the inside, and remembering that I was the one who had installed the lock, and that I had done it to prove a point. 10 days. That was the other thing sitting on my chest. In 10 days, our board would vote to transfer operational control of Harbor House, the small waterfront property where my mother and father started this company with a mop bucket and a borrowed truck, into a new foundation-led entity under a 99-year operating agreement. A charitable renewal project, housing and job placement for homeless adults. Camille's life work. Once that agreement was executed, unwinding it would take years and a fortune in lawyers, and everyone at the table knew it. At midnight, I called my mother, straight to voicemail. I called again, voicemail again. In the car, Camille adjusted her scarf and said, without looking up, "Your mother told me she needed space from all of this." "She said that to you?" "She did, last week." Camille finally looked at me, and her voice softened in a way that was almost worse. "Daniel, I know you want her blessing. She isn't going to give it. At some point, you have to stop waiting for a woman who has never once let you finish building something on your own." Every word of that was designed to be true enough to hurt. I did not answer. I looked out at the rain on the harbor, and I thought about a cracked brass key on a faded navy ribbon, and I realized I had seen it before. The Founder Archive at Mercer Harbor is 2 rooms in the basement of the flagship hotel with bad lighting and boxes nobody has opened since my father's funeral. I went down there the next morning before 6. I did not go looking for money. I did not go looking for contracts. I went looking for an object, because the object was the only thing in that whole night that did not fit. I found it in the 3rd box, a photograph curled at the corners of my father standing in the lobby of Harbor House in a short-sleeved shirt, holding up a wooden board hung with room keys. He is grinning like a man who cannot believe he owns anything at all. And there, on the end, 1 key with a ribbon threaded through the tag. Navy blue. In the photo, the ribbon is bright. They cleaned those rooms themselves, my parents, both of them. My mother scrubbed bathrooms in the morning and did the books at night for 4 years before they hired a second employee. My father used to say the same thing every evening when he flipped the sign in the window. "Lights on for the late ones." When he died, the keys went into a case in the executive archive. All except one. My mother kept one. I sat on the concrete floor with that photograph and let myself think about the thing I had been avoiding for a decade. 6 years ago, I tried to launch a small hospitality group of my own. 3 properties, my own money, my own name. My mother called 2 of my investors without telling me. She restructured a lease I had negotiated. She said afterward that she had protected me from a bad partner. And the maddening thing is that she was probably right, and it did not matter because what she had actually done was tell me in the plainest language available that she did not believe I could stand up without her hand under my elbow. Camille stood beside me through all of it. She was the one who said out loud what I had never let myself say. She was the one who sat with me in a parking garage at 1 in the morning while I shook with anger. And I promised her something that night. I said, "Our marriage will never require my mother's permission." I meant it as love. I want to be clear about that. But a promise like that becomes a rule, and a rule becomes a habit. And the habit I built was this. When Camille made a decision, I did not question it. Questioning her felt like choosing my mother. So for years I signed what she put in front of me, and I called it trust. And I felt very good about myself. I climbed out of that basement with 3 questions and no accusations. Who was the woman under the awning? Why did she have that key? And why were employee complaints dying inside my wife's office? I asked for the security footage from the donor entrance that same morning. It should have taken 20 minutes. Instead, I got a written reply from Foundation Counsel, explaining that recordings involving vulnerable individuals had been restricted under a privacy protocol adopted to protect program participants. The restriction request had been submitted the night of the gala by Camille. She had thought about scrutiny before I had thought about looking. My sister found me in my office that afternoon. Nia is 36, sharper than me, and she serves as secretary to our board, which means she reads every document any of us pretends to read. She came in and closed the door and did not sit down. "You pulled Ray Colby's file," she said. "You requested gala footage. You went into the archive." "Daniel, people talk. A woman got thrown into the rain outside our building, and Camille handled it badly. I agree with you. That is a public relations problem, not a conspiracy. Complaints from staff are being buried, or complaints are being handled at the level they belong." Nia crossed her arms. "Do you remember Aaron Petty?" I did. 4 years ago, I stood up in a management meeting and accused a food and beverage director of falsifying labor hours. I had a spreadsheet and a bad feeling. I was wrong. The man was cleared in 11 days and gone in 6 months anyway, because you cannot unsay a thing like that. You do not get to call suspicion proof just because this time you feel certain, Nia said. Nia, Camille has spent 4 years building the Harbor Renewal Initiative. 4 years. If you go around shaking the tree 10 days before the vote, donors walk. And the people who lose are not you and not her. She was not defending Camille out of affection. She was defending a project from a brother with a history. I could not even be angry about it. That evening, I asked Ruth Ellison one question. Ruth is 71, spent 30 years in corporate finance, and does not gossip, which is why the board pays her to sit at the head of the table. Ruth, how many Harbor House founder keys with the navy ribbon are still in existence? She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "As far as I know, 1. I did not sleep that night, because if there was 1 and my mother had it, then the woman my wife had thrown out into the rain was not a stranger at all. I did not find her with police reports or camera systems. I found her by asking people who clean things. A kitchen porter named Deshawn remembered her walking east along the waterfront after the gala, toward the overnight adult shelter on Kestrel Street. A woman at the shelter desk said an older lady with a gray coat had come in twice that week and never given a last name. I sat on a bench across from that building from 6 in the morning until almost 8, in a navy coat that cost more than the beds inside, feeling like the worst kind of man. She came out at 10 past 8. Gray hood, worn shoes, paper cup. Up close, I did not recognize her, and I want you to understand how that is possible. Posture is a language. My mother stands like a woman who has been listened to for 40 years. This woman stood like someone who expected to be moved along. Her hair was flattened and gray at the roots. She had let herself become invisible on purpose, and it worked, and it had worked on her own son. I said, "Ma'am, I'd like to buy you breakfast." And she said, without turning her head, "Lights on for the late ones." I stopped breathing. "Mom." "Sit down, Daniel. You are blocking the sidewalk." I did not sit down. I stood there in front of my mother, Eleanor Mercer, who built a company out of a 12-room waterfront motel, and the first thing I felt was not relief, it was rage. "You let my wife treat you like that," I said, "just to prove a point? I did not go there to be treated like that. I went there to see what happens to people who are not me." She wrapped both hands around the cup. I did not expect her to sign a trespass order. I will admit that. I underestimated her. "You underestimated her. Mom, do you hear yourself? You put on a costume and tested my wife." "I received complaints." "Then bring me the complaints." I did not know whether the complaints would reach you or reach her. She looked at me then, and there was something in her face I had never seen before, which was doubt. Was I wrong about that? I could not answer, because she was not wrong, and that made me angrier. "Listen to me," I said. "A secret test does not reveal a person. It manufactures the exact distrust it claims to find. You have done this my whole life. You did it to my business. You did it to me." She did not argue. She let it land, and then she told me what she actually had, which was almost nothing. She had visited 4 foundation-controlled locations over 6 weeks. Walk-in adults were being turned away at 3 of them. Staff would talk to her for 2 minutes and then look over their shoulders and stop talking. Program tours that had been scheduled in advance looked entirely different from ordinary Tuesdays. She had no financial evidence. She had no document. She had nothing a board would look at twice. But she had heard one thing. 10 days before the gala, I was outside the Kestrel Street office when Camille came out with 2 men in good suits, she said. They were not from a housing agency. One of them said something about the schedule, and Camille said, "Phase 2 stays inside the room until after the vote." Phase 2 of what? I do not know. I could not follow them, Daniel. I was a homeless woman standing on a sidewalk. That is the entire point. We sat on the bench then, the 2 of us, and she offered me half her coffee, which I took. "I will end this today," she said. "I will walk into that building, I will take off this coat, and I will tell every donor in the city what your wife did to me." And here is where I made the first real decision of my life that was entirely my own. "No." She turned. "Excuse me?" If I stop this by saying my billionaire mother was insulted, everyone will learn the wrong lesson. Every employee in that company will learn that the rule is, be careful, because you never know who somebody really is. That is not a rule. That is a lottery. My voice was shaking, and I let it shake. I want to know what she is doing to people who do not have a billionaire mother. My mother looked at me for a long time. Then she took the brass key out of her pocket and put it in my hand. The tag was worn smooth. The ribbon had gone the color of dishwater. "Then open the right door," she said. I took it. I did not want it. I took it anyway, and I put it in the inside pocket of my coat. And that decision cost me almost everything I had. Nia did not believe me at first. Then she believed me and got angrier. "She disguised herself," my sister said, pacing my kitchen. "Our mother. Put on a coat and went out to catch Camille in something. Daniel, that is not investigation. That is entrapment with a costume." I told her that. "Good, because it proves nothing about Harbor House. Camille being unkind to a woman on a sidewalk and Camille running a legitimate housing project are two separate facts, and you know it." "I do know it," I said. "That is exactly what I told her." Nia stopped pacing. I think that was the first moment my sister considered that I might not be repeating Aaron Petty. Not because I had evidence, because I had agreed with her. She sat down, and then she told me something she had been carrying since March. "North Line Living," she said. "Camille has met with them at least 4 times, twice on the calendar, twice not." "Who are they?" "That is my problem. They are not a housing nonprofit. They are not a shelter operator. Northline runs upscale wellness residences, private hospitality, high-end long-stay properties in 5 cities. And her explanation? Building operations consulting, facilities, staffing models, maintenance. She said Harbor House is 80 years old and none of us know how to run a residential building. Which is a completely reasonable answer. That is what made it dangerous. Nia and I did not go digging through file cabinets. We asked one question and followed it. And it is a question anybody listening can hold in their head. Why does a luxury operator need a role inside a homeless housing project? What we learned in 2 days was this. Northline was not just consulting. Northline's executive team was scheduled to give a closed presentation at Mercer Harbor within a week of the board vote. Not before it, after it. And something else fell into place, sideways, the way old things do. For 2 years, Camille had told me my mother was blocking her. She said Eleanor refused to approve innovation partners. She said Eleanor could not stand watching her daughter-in-law succeed. I had believed it, because it fit everything I already thought about my mother. When I actually asked Eleanor, the story was smaller and worse. She had never refused a partner. She had asked one question in writing 3 separate times. What will the private partner control, and for how long? Camille had never answered it. I told Nia what I had decided, standing in my kitchen at midnight. My mother was wrong to test her, I said. That does not mean my wife is telling me the truth. That became my position. I held it for the rest of the story, and it was the only thing that kept me sane. 2 nights later, I asked Camille about Northline directly. No accusation, no mother, just the question. We were in the study. She had a glass of wine and a pastel pink cardigan over her shoulders, and she answered me for 20 minutes without raising her voice once. The building has 212 residential units, Daniel. Do you know how to run a 200-unit residential property? Because I don't, and neither does anyone on our staff. We run hotels. Guests leave after 3 nights. Residents don't leave. They get sick. They lose jobs. They need maintenance at 2 in the morning. She set the glass down. Northline knows how to operate a building like that. Donors want measurable outcomes. They want to know their money produced something that still exists in 10 years. And in 99 years? And in 99 years, there is still a building standing on that waterfront with people living in it, instead of a plaque about your father. She let that sit. That is what you want, isn't it? You want Harbor House preserved, not used, preserved. A sentimental museum with your family's name on the wall. I did not have a good answer, because part of me did want that. Then she did the thing I did not expect. She got quiet, and she stopped arguing, and she told me the truth about herself. "Do you know how I am introduced?" she said. "At every event, for 11 years. This is Camille, Daniel Mercer's wife." She was not crying. Camille does not cry to win. I grew up in 4 apartments in 6 years because my father lost everything and my mother kept us moving before the landlord could file. I know exactly what it is to depend on someone else's decency. I married into a family that has never once needed anyone's decency, and I have been grateful, and I have been so tired of being grateful. She looked at me. Harbor House is the first thing I will have built. Not inherited, built. Do not take that from me because your mother got her feelings hurt. And God help me, for about 90 seconds, I believed her completely. Then I asked, as gently as I could, whether Northline would have any right to change what the building was for. "None," she said. "The mission language is permanent." 4 days later, Naya sent me a photograph of a slide. It came from an internal presentation deck routed through the foundation office. The title of the section was Phase 2 Operating Model. There were no legal clauses on it, just a diagram of a building, floor by floor, and a timeline. The lower level and the ground floor were shaded and labeled Community Services. Every floor above them, after a transition period of 36 months, was labeled Premium Extended Stay Residences. 14 floors. 2 would stay charitable. 12 would become exactly the kind of place my company builds for people who can pay. The plan did not kill the charity. That is what made it brilliant. It let the ribbon get cut, the press release get written, the donor checks get cashed, the awards get handed out, and then, 3 years later, when nobody is looking, it quietly shrinks the promise down to a lobby and a basement. Nia and I sat in her car looking at that photograph and asked the only question left. Did Camille know? Or was Northline walking my wife into something with a smile on its face? I still did not have proof of what she intended. I had a diagram. For about 36 hours, I thought we had her. We had 3 things. We had the Phase 2 slide. We had Lena Ortiz, who was willing to say out loud what the walk-in instructions had been, and we had confirmation from Nia's own board calendar that Northline's executives were attending the founder event where the vote would be certified. Lena knew what she was risking. She had 11 years in and a daughter in nursing school. I have watched people get turned around at that door in January, she told me. I will say it to the chairwoman. I will say it to anybody. Ruth Ellison listened to all 3 of us in her office for an hour and 15 minutes. And at the end of it, she did exactly what a good chair does. She refused to take my side. I am not going to tell you that you are right, Daniel, she said. I'm going to tell you what the board is entitled to. This board approved a project described as a permanent public service use of Harbor House. If the final operating model materially differs from what the board and the donors were told, that is grounds to postpone the vote. But a draft slide is not a decision. I need a clear link between the executive director and that plan. I found it the next morning, and it was almost too easy. Internal presentation decks at our company move through a routing sheet. Every reviewer initials it. On the routing sheet for the North Line deck, in the reviewer column, in blue ink were the initials CM. She had seen it. She had signed off on seeing it. Ruth agreed to convene a preliminary board review at 9 the following morning. That night I called my mother from my car outside the hotel, and for the first time since the rain, I did not feel like a man drowning. I think I can fix this without you revealing yourself, I told her. There was a pause on the line. Good, Eleanor said. Then maybe you are finally fixing your life instead of asking me to. I sat there afterward with my hands on the wheel and let myself feel something dangerously close to peace. When I walked into the review meeting the next morning, Camille was already seated at the far end of the table in a pastel pink blazer, hands folded, perfectly calm. And in front of every single board member was a folder with my signature on the first page. She did not deny the Phase 2 draft. She had thought further ahead than that. That document is one of 4 exploratory operating models produced by our consultants, Camille said. I reviewed all 4. Reviewing a model is not approving a model. If reviewing bad ideas is misconduct, none of us should be in this room. Then she opened the folder. It was an operating authorization I had signed 14 months earlier. 2 pages. It granted the executive director of the Mercer Harbor Foundation authority to negotiate and explore private operating partnerships for foundation properties, including long-term management structures, without individual board sign-off at the exploratory stage. I remembered signing it. I remembered exactly how I felt. Proud of myself. Generous. A man who trusts his wife. My husband, Camille said to the room, not to me, approved this process. He has now discovered that his mother dislikes the project, and he would like all of you to believe that a plan he authorized has somehow shocked him. Then she read a message I had sent to our general counsel the previous spring. I trust Camille to make the operational decisions, my own words, in my own voice, in a room full of people deciding whether I was reliable. She turned to Lena next, and she did it kindly, which was worse. She noted, without raising her voice, that Ms. Ortiz had received 2 prior written warnings for violating guest access protocol, including once admitting a non-guest to a restricted floor. She did not say Lena was lying. She said she wanted the board to have complete context. It did not prove anything. It did not have to. It put a smudge on the glass. Then Ruth asked Nia directly whether she could confirm that the executive director had approved the conversion model as the final plan. And my sister told the truth. No, Nia said. I can confirm she reviewed it. I cannot confirm she approved it. She was right. She was completely right, and I have never felt so alone in a room. Camille closed her folder and delivered the last piece, and I recognized it the second it started because she had told me about it herself months ago in a conversation so procedural that I had forgotten it by dinner. Under our conflict policy, she said, an executive may request temporary removal of a family member from project deliberations where an undisclosed personal conflict threatens the integrity of the process. There is an undisclosed family conflict here. I am requesting it. I could have destroyed that in one sentence. All I had to say was, the woman your executive director had trespassed in the rain was Eleanor Mercer, and she has been investigating this foundation in disguise. Say that out loud in that room, and what does the board hear? They hear that there is, in fact, a secret family operation running against the executive director. They hear that Camille is right. I said nothing, and by saying nothing, I lost my seat at the table. I came home that night to find my coat on the bed and the brass key on the dresser beside it. Camille was standing by the window. "I have seen photographs of that key," she said. "It is a founder key. Your mother has the only one." She turned around. "You have been meeting with her this entire time, while telling me you were asking questions about staffing. Camille, you promised me there would never be another secret alliance with your mother." And I stood there in my own bedroom with absolutely nothing to say, because I had made that promise, and I had broken it, and no amount of context was going to unbreak it. She did not scream. She picked up her bag and went to the guest room, and the quiet click of that door was the loudest thing I heard all week. My mother came the next morning. Someone on the board had told her about the review. She stood in my kitchen and did not sit down. "You had the key in your pocket," she said. "You used it to trace me, and then you kept meeting me, and you told your wife nothing. I was trying to protect the investigation. You are trying to beat secrecy with better secrecy." She picked up her gloves. "That is my sickness, Daniel. I gave it to you. I am not going to stand here and watch you take a bigger dose of it than I ever did." And she left. Let me tell you what I had lost in 9 days. My seat in the project discussions, my credibility with the board, my sister's public support, Lena as a witness anybody would trust, my mother, my wife. And underneath all of that, the thing I did not notice going until it was gone, which was my certainty that I was a fair man. I sat at my kitchen table at 2 in the morning with that authorization on the table in front of me, and I read my own signature until the letters stopped looking like a name. And I finally said it out loud in an empty house. She did not steal all that power from me. I handed some of it to her. That sentence was the end of the first half of my life and the beginning of the second. Here is what I understood the next morning, with a clear head and no seat at the table. I had been trying to prove Camille was a liar. That was the wrong job. Proving a person is a liar requires documents I could no longer access, witnesses she could discredit, and a room that would let me speak. And I had lost all 3. So I changed the question. Not, how do I prove she is guilty, but how do I make the actual choice impossible to disguise? I wrote a statement and sent it to every member of the board that afternoon. 2 paragraphs. It said that I had delegated authority I did not adequately supervise. It said I had stopped reading decisions closely. It said I had used marital trust as a reason to avoid difficult conversations, and that a governance failure of this size does not happen without someone in my chair letting it. It said the responsibility was partly mine. Then I resigned my vote on the Harbor House project, voluntarily, in writing, before anyone took it. Nia called me within the hour and asked if I had lost my mind. "You just gave up the only leverage you had," No, I gave up the only thing she had on me. Because from the moment I signed that statement, Camille could no longer say I was fighting to get my control back. There was nothing left for me to get back. My new method was one question, not a document, not a file. A question asked out loud in front of the people who were about to vote. If this board approves the project exactly as the public understands it, can Harbor House ever become premium private residences? If Northline said no, then I had been wrong, and I would say so publicly and take whatever came. If Northline said yes, then Camille would have to stand in front of 300 people and choose. And then the timeline collapsed under me. The board vote was moved. It would now be certified at the Founder Anniversary Gala itself, 4 days away, in front of donors, press, employees, and the Northline executive team. Camille had done that. She wanted the vote to happen inside the applause.
Nia came to my apartment that night and apologized for the review meeting.
I should have backed you.
No, I said, and I meant it. You refused to claim more than you knew. That is the only reason anyone in that room is going to believe you the next time you open your mouth. Do not apologize to me for being honest. I am done asking people to be loyal instead of accurate. She looked at me strangely, like she was recalculating something. Then she gave me the last piece I needed, and it was not evidence at all.
Northline is presenting live, she said, at Founder Night, before the vote is certified. Camille wants the room to see a polished operator on stage, and then she wants the gavel to come down while everyone is still impressed. I actually laughed. I did not need to steal Northline's plan. I did not need a leaked file or a hidden recording.
Camille was going to put the plan on a screen herself in front of 300 witnesses because she believed no one would ask the one rude question in the middle of a celebration.
I went to see my mother the day before the gala. She was in her own house, in her own clothes, and she looked older than the woman in the gray hood. I owe you an apology, I said. I used your key like a weapon, and I hid it from my wife. That was mine. I did that. She nodded once. And I need to say the other thing, too, I said. You were wrong to disguise yourself and test my wife. Whatever you found, however right you turn out to be, the method was wrong, and it cost me the ability to tell the truth in a room where it mattered. I waited for the counter-argument. My mother has a counter-argument for everything. I know, she said. That was all. 2 words from a woman who has never in my memory conceded a point. Then I asked her for the only thing I have ever asked her for. Stay hidden. Do not walk into that ballroom to save me. If this truth cannot stand up without your money and your name behind it, then it is not strong enough, and I would rather lose. I stopped. If you come, come because you decided to, not because I called you. She was quiet a long moment. All right, she said. And that was the first conversation my mother and I ever had with a boundary in it that neither of us broke. 2 days before, when they cleared out my office and took my badge, my sister walked in behind the facilities crew, saw the brass key lying in the top drawer with my pens, and put it in her purse. She did not tell me. I did not know I still had it. The Founder Anniversary Gala is the largest night on our calendar. 800 guests.
the ballroom of the flagship hotel with the harbor black behind the glass. Board members, donors, the press, community partners, 40 employees with 20 years or more of service, and, at a table near the stage, 4 executives from Northline Living. I arrived in a navy suit with no title, no vote, and no plan except one sentence. Camille had gotten ahead of me that morning. A statement went out from the foundation office saying that Daniel Mercer had stepped back from the Harbor House project to focus on family matters and asking for privacy and understanding during a difficult time. It was gracious. It was warm. It quietly told 800 people that I was not well. She found me by the service corridor at 7 o'clock in a pastel pink gown, her hair in that neat bun. "I want to give you one chance," she said. "Stand with me tonight. Say a few words about your father. Let the vote happen. Then you and I can go home and take our marriage apart or put it back together, however you want, in private, with no audience. And if I speak against it, then I will take that as your answer about the marriage." I looked at my wife of 11 years and asked the question I should have asked her a year and a half earlier. "Camille, do you want the marriage, or do you want my endorsement?" She did not answer. She adjusted my collar the way she had 1,000 times and walked away. The silence told me more than any confession she could have made. Nia found me at 7:40 with her jaw tight. She had found that afternoon the written request that the donor entrance footage from the night of the trespass be permanently deleted rather than merely restricted. Camille had signed it herself 31 hours after the incident. It did not prove anything about Harbor House. It proved she had knowingly buried something that made her look bad. "I'm not using it unless she lies directly," Nia said. "In public, out loud. If she lies, I will stand up." Lena Ortiz came in her good dress and carried nothing at all. That was the whole plan for Lena. She would be in the room, and if anyone asked her what the instructions had been, she would answer honestly, and she would probably never get another job in this industry with a Mercer reference. I asked Ruth Ellison for nothing, not one thing. She chaired the event and did not know what I was going to do. And somewhere out in the rain on the waterfront, a woman in a gray coat was deciding for herself. The lights went down. The doors closed. Northline's presentation began. Their final slide was still hidden. Camille gave the best speech of her life. I want to say that plainly because I was standing at the side of that ballroom hating her, and I still felt the room lift. She talked about a door. She said a building is only bricks, and what makes it holy is who you let walk through it. She talked about second chances and about the difference between charity, which lets you feel good for an evening, and infrastructure, which is still standing when you are dead. 800 people applauded, and half of them meant it with their whole hearts. Then she did something smart. She addressed the family problem before I could get anywhere near a microphone. "Some of you have heard that my husband has concerns," she said. "I'm going to tell you the truth about that, because this family does not hide things." She let the pause do its work. She has always known exactly how long a pause can be before it turns into a mistake. 14 months ago, Daniel Mercer signed the authorization that allowed this foundation to explore private operating partnerships. He read it. He signed it. Nothing about this process has been hidden from him because he built the door it walked through. Her voice went gentle, and gentle was the weapon.
He has since had a very painful disagreement with his mother about the future of this property. I love my husband. I have watched that disagreement take pieces out of him for 2 years, but I am afraid it has now come to live inside our project. She looked out at the room, and she found the donors, the ones who write the checks that keep the lights on. I will not let old family wounds destroy a project designed to help people with no family safety net. I stood at the side of that ballroom in my navy suit and understood exactly what had just happened to me. She had not called me a liar. She had called me a wounded son. There is no defense against that. Deny it, and you sound wounded. Accept it, and you sound unfit. Somewhere behind me, a server set down a tray of glasses, and the small, ordinary sound of it steadied me more than any speech could have. Because here is what I had that she did not know I had. I was not there to defend myself. I had already sent the board a statement admitting every failure she was about to accuse me of. I had already given up my vote. There was nothing left in me for her to expose, which meant there was nothing left in her hand to swing. She thought she was disarming me. She was disarming herself in front of 800 witnesses, 4 Northline executives, and a slide deck that had not finished playing yet. I waited until the applause thinned. Then I walked to the floor microphone at the edge of the stage.